Hey, everybody. It is Thursday. NFL fans, that means there's a game tonight. It also means that we're closer to another NFL Sunday. And we're here to talk about all of it with you on the NFL Playbook Podcast from Sportsnaut.com. I'm Scott Gulbransen, the editor and writer at Sportsnaut.com, along with my co-host, Evan Groat. Evan, got a lot to get into. We have, of course, our great guest coming up, which we're going to tell everybody about in just a second. But so much going on in the NFL. We got to get to a lot of it. But man, it was a great weekend last weekend. We talked a lot about the Dolphins the last couple weeks. We talked last week about the 49er Dallas game. Turned out to be a stinker because the 49ers are just that dang good.
Yeah, they are. That was a total blowout. And I said it. You can't trust Dak Prescott in those big games. He had a rough performance, another 3 interception game. And another thing that I want to point out is this shows us how much of a week-to-week league the NFL is. I mean, we were sitting here talking about how we thought the Bengals, they were shot. We thought they were over. They had a big win this past weekend. It looks like Burrow is back to his old self again. And we also saw a team who I was talking a lot about, the Bills. They lost a game in London. They lost one of their top players to injury. So week-to-week league
and
here.
Evan, in fact, you last week declared them the best team in the AFC.
Yes, and
you never
I
know.
did, and obviously that's changed now. So it just, again, it shows you how things change so quickly and so rapidly in the NFL.
And that's the point with the NFL. It's a great, valid point, which is the idea that the NFL, you think you know. I mean, we follow the NFL, we cover the NFL every single week, and still we could use all the knowledge, what we've seen, and come up and say, hey, the Bills are the best team in the AFC, which I believed as well. I picked the Chiefs a little ahead of them, if you remember. But the Chiefs didn't look good either, by the way. They won again, but they didn't look very good. And so it just changes week to week, and it's a long season. I declared the Bengals out dead from the playoffs. I'm going to stand by that, actually, even though they look better. I think the road for them to get back is just much more difficult now. But there's so much going on with what's going on. Now, guests on this show today, we're going to talk about the Detroit Lions, or for those of you who prefer the Detroit Lions. Man, they are on fire. Will Burchfield from 97.1 The Ticket in Detroit is going to be with us. He'll talk about that. And then in the third segment, we're going to have our good friend Johnny Stanton, NFL fullback. We're going to talk to him about the entire NFC. What happens now after that thumping the 49ers put on Dallas, and of course the Lions in the NFC doing well. There's some surprise in the NFC. We'll talk to him about that in depth in the third segment. But let's jump into some news, Evan. I mean, you look at what's going on around the league. Of course, the end of the month, the trade deadline. We saw Kirk Cousins lose Jefferson to injury. He's out for at least 4 weeks. And then the media asked him on Wednesday, hey, there's reports that they could trade you. Would you be open to a trade? And Kirk Cousins said, hey, I'm worried about the Bears. We got the Bears this week. That's what I'm worried about. Good answer by him. Then you have McCole Hardman in New York. Jets went out and signed their big free agent fast dude, never use him. And they asked him today about the reports, and he said, you know what? Yeah, I'd be open to it because he's not playing. He wasn't even active last week.
Yeah.
Boy, some trade talk heating up here.
Yeah, the deadline's coming up October 31st. And we talked about the Kirk Cousins rumors that were going around after Aaron Rodgers was lost for the season. I said at that time, I didn't think they should trade him. Now, again, things change rapidly here in the NFL. It doesn't look like it would be a bad decision at this point. I wonder who a trade partner would be for them. I mean, the Jets, you keep hearing Aaron Rodgers thinks he can come back at some point this year. I don't think that's likely. So I don't know if that would be a good move for the Jets to invest any picks to try to acquire Kirk Cousins, thinking about all the picks they've already got invested in Aaron Rodgers. What about the Atlanta Falcons? That's a team that, to me, they're in the mix there in a competitive NFC South division. I don't know if Desmond Ridder is the answer there. They're giving him a shot to try to take that job, but he hasn't been able to really run away with it. I think Kirk Cousins would be a good fit there with some of those weapons they have that aren't being utilized properly, like Pitts, the tight end. I think that would be a good fit for him if they are to move on from Kirk Cousins.
It would be, but Kirk Cousins has said numerous times that he wants to retire in Minnesota. So I don't think he would approve a deal. And plus, it would be for a few months, right? He doesn't want to uproot his family for a few months because he's a free agent after this year. So we'll see what happens there. Another big piece of news, we got a couple minutes before we go to the break here, and that is Devon Achane, of course, the rookie running back for the Dolphins. We've talked about him. I've written about the Dolphins on Sportsnaut.com. Just a lot of fun to watch the team and what this kid has done. And now with his injury to his knee, he's going to be lost for at least 4 weeks, probably longer. Just incredible and unfortunate for the young man because he was off to such a good start and he was so much fun to watch, Evan.
Yeah, you hate to see it. Young player off to such a good start. He's second in the NFL in rushing yards right now with 460 yards. So you hope that he can get back in that 4-week time span and continue on with his season. But one good thing for the Dolphins and Dolphins fans out there is you got plenty of other weapons on the offense. You still got Mostert, the top running back. You got plenty of weapons. So they should be okay there in Miami while Achane gets back to full health.
Yeah, and we'll see. The Dolphins are loaded, and we talked about trades, and we will talk with Johnny Stanton in the third segment about the NFC, but we'll also ask him because I think there's a lot going on. Could the San Francisco 49ers be in the trade market? I know it sounds crazy, but could they be in the trade market on the defensive side? Could the Rams trade Aaron Donald? They're doing better than expected, but there's a lot of teams out there who could use some defensive help, including in the AFC. So we'll see what happens, but it's going to be fascinating, Evan, here before the trade deadline, I think, this year.
Yeah, the 49ers don't have many weaknesses on that roster. I mean, I was just taking a look at it the other day because I saw something on the NFL Network with their morning show. Kyle Brandt and the crew were ranking their top 5 49ers players. They've got so much talent on that roster, but when you have a team that is this good and has a great chance to compete for a Super Bowl, you're going to go out there and do whatever you can to solidify your roster. So that could be an option. You're right. They might make a bold move here to try to put themselves over the top.
They just might. And the Detroit Lions might be in them. Can you imagine Aaron Donald on the Detroit Lions? Do they have the money? The good news is we're going to talk to Will Burchfield from 97.1 The Ticket next here on the NFL Playbook Podcast from Sportsnaut.com. So don't go anywhere. We're talking Lions coming up next. Welcome back to the NFL Playbook Podcast from Sportsnaut.com. Evan Groat, Scott Gulbransen with you. And joining us now is Will Burchfield. You can also follow him on x.com at Burchie, IE_kid. He, of course, with 97.1 The Ticket in Detroit, an Odyssey station. So he's part of my Odyssey family. Of course, that's where we have our Silver and Black Today show covering the Raiders. So, Will, I appreciate you being on, man, and taking the time to talk about just how electric it is with the Lions in Detroit. Let's start there. I mean, I can feel the energy from here all the way from Detroit over this Lions start. Of course, we've seen them take over part of Arrowhead Stadium. We've seen them take part over, which I never thought I would see, Lambeau Field. Just give me a sense for the excitement around this team through 5 weeks in the Detroit area.
Yeah, I think you can feel it on the moon. I mean, I've covered this team for 7 years and have never sensed anything close to this level of optimism, excitement, just utter hype around this team. And they've done a really good job of fulfilling it so far with a 4-1 start. You compare that to last year, they were 1-4 at this time on their way to 1-6. There were legitimate doubts at this point last season about Dan Campbell, about Brad Holmes as GM, about the direction of this rebuild at large. And you fast forward to today, and the Lions are on firmer ground than they've been literally this century and at any point since Barry Sanders and Chris Spielman were kind of the faces of this franchise. So it's amazing to think how far they've come in just the span of 1 year.
Will, I want to ask you about general manager Brad Holmes. He's been pushing all the right buttons since he became the general manager of the team. They're getting all kinds of contributions from the rookie class, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But I want to ask you about one of the other pieces that he brought in this year, and that's David Montgomery.
Yeah.
He is off to a great start, 7th in the NFL right now in rushing. Talk to us a little bit about the start that Montgomery's off to and what he means for this offense.
He's been the bell cow so far, and you don't see many of those guys left around the NFL. It seems to be such a tandem running back league, but they really lean heavily on Montgomery. And I think when they signed him this offseason, 3-year, $18 million deal, there was some skepticism about whether they overvalued the running back position. We talk so much now about running backs being devalued, but I think they actually kind of zigged when the league was zagging. They saw a guy they could ride heavily while also biding time for Jahmyr Gibbs. But Montgomery has been, I think, even more than they could have bargained for. I mean, he's not just running hard, he's also elusive. I mean, he makes a lot of guys miss. And as good as this offensive line is, in the few instances when it trips up, Montgomery usually makes something out of nothing. He has been just a star for this offense so far. And again, I think Jahmyr Gibbs will have a chance to shine more and more as the season goes on. But Montgomery kind of represents this team in the way that he searches for hard yards and then pops up and goes looking for more. He does sort of represent this team, and he has some elements of Dan Campbell in him. So he's a perfect match for this offense and for this team.
Well, you mentioned Gibbs, right? But there's another there's parts of that rookie class that are so impressive. And of course, you got to start with Sam Laporta, who's just lighting up the league. And you wrote a story up on the website for 97 Won the Ticket talking about Laporta and how hard it is for a tight end to come in because you're a blocker. So you're playing basically an offensive line position, and you also have to be a receiver. So you see him come in, talk about that entirety of what he's doing, but then also the rest of that rookie class, because it's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, and this is what Brad Holmes is now known for in Detroit, is just hitting on draft picks. They said they wanted to build it that way through the draft, and every GM says that. Not many can execute it as well as Brad Holmes has through 3 seasons. Laporta is just the latest example of that. He is everything that Brad Holmes said he was when he got here. And we often hear GMs talk about tight ends kind of being the matchup problem, and they can also block in the run and the pass game, and they make plays after the catch. And a lot of times it feels like lip service or platitudes, but Laporta has done all of those things. I mean, he's not just first among tight ends in yards. He's first in contested catches. He's second in yards after catch. He has really gained the trust of Jared Goff as a reliable target over the middle, in the slot, even down the field on some deep balls. He has been really, really, really good. And it's also reflective of just good business by the Lions. I mean, they traded TJ Hawkinson midway through last season, in part because they weren't ready to pay who they viewed as a one-dimensional tight end the money he would get from the Vikings, which was $14 million per year. In Laporta, it looks like they have at least the equal of Hawkinson, maybe better than Hawkinson, for $14 million less. I mean, that's just really smart, like, asset management. And they can take that surplus and use it to cover an extension for Jonah Jackson, or put it towards an extension for Jared Goff, perhaps next offseason. So Laporta has come in here, and at a position where you have to be equal parts offensive tackle and wide receiver, he's been really good in every way. So another hit by Brad Holmes in the draft.
Will, you also mentioned Jared Goff there, and I want to ask you about him. You know, he was cast away by the Rams as part of that Matthew Stafford trade. He's playing some of the best football of his career right now, and I think it's interesting because going into this season and going back to last year's draft, there were some rumors that possibly they would be looking to move on from him or replace him, but now it looks like there might be a contract extension in his future. Are you hearing anything about that possibility?
Yeah, I don't know whoever fueled the rumors that they were looking to move on from him, because that was never the case. And it really hasn't even been the case in his tenure here. I mean, Brad Holmes has been very clear from the start that the Lions viewed him as a long-term quarterback, not this bridge quarterback that everyone else assumed he was. And really, since the middle part of his first season here, which is a stretch that now encompasses 30 plus games, he has been one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, if you look at passer rating over that stretch, he is right up there with the Joe Burrows and Patrick Mahomeses of the world. It's not a stretch to say that. Now, of course, the arm talent and sheer skill might not match those guys, but Jared Goff is getting the absolute most out of what he has, in part thanks to Ben Johnson. And yeah, at this rate, he is certainly due for an extension, I think, this coming offseason. He's still just 28 years old. He's in the middle of what he calls his best stretch of football of his career. He thinks he can still do more. So, yeah, the time is right, assuming he continues his current stretch, to extend him next offseason. And I think that's something they get done. Now, what's it going to cost them? Well, you'll probably start at about $45 million per year. I mean, Daniel Jones is making 40. If that's the case, then Goff is at least worth 45 to this team moving forward.
Yeah, he's got a good case there, I would say.
No doubt.
You mentioned offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. Let's talk about him too and what he's been able to do there, because I've seen that offense grow and just do so well in Detroit. He's obviously going to be, as long as the Lions continue to do what they're doing, he's going to be a hot name in the head coaching ranks. There'll be a lot of switchovers, again, as there usually are in the NFL this year, as we see a lot of folks struggling. Talk about that and what he's been able to do and what he's brought to that Lions club.
Yeah, I think Ben Johnson has 12 games plus maybe the playoffs more in Detroit, because he's certainly going to be a head coach next offseason if that's what he wants to do. There's going to be no shortage of teams lining up to hire him. Ben Johnson has done a really good job in Detroit of recreating the things that worked so well for Goff in LA. And once McVay kind of kicked Goff to the curb in 2021, because McVay is this offensive genius, everyone else in the NFL seemed to decide that Jared Goff was washed up and that he couldn't be the answer to a high-powered offense in the NFL. And Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell have kind of twisted that notion on its head, and they've got him thriving again in an offense built on the play action pass, where he's always been really good. Even the years that he struggled in LA, he's always been great in play action. They have him behind a really good offensive line. They do have an array of weapons. You mentioned Laporta, St. Brown, Josh Reynolds, one of the unsung heroes here. They've got a great backfield tandem, Montgomery, Gibbs. They're running all kinds of different run schemes, outside zone, inside zone. It sets up that play action pass. And the offense that Goff thrived in LA has kind of been revived here in Detroit. The one difference, maybe the biggest difference, is that the Lions are asking Goff to do so much more kind of pre-snap at the line of scrimmage than McVay and the Rams ever did. And I think in doing so, they have kind of imbued him with confidence. Like, we believe in you, we trust you. They have empowered him as not just a quarterback, but as kind of an offensive mind. And he and Ben Johnson are in complete sync when it comes to the game plan, how things should look, and then even on game day when it comes to how things should be called. So those two have been huge for each other, certainly Johnson for Goff.
Hey, Will, I'm looking forward to the game this weekend. The Buccaneers 3-1 against the Lions 4-1. It's a big game for both teams. But the Lions were without three key starters last week: Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, and the rookie Brian Branch. Do you have an update for us? And what's your expectation for those three guys and their availability this week?
So St. Brown should play. He returned to practice today in a limited capacity. Dan Campbell said that he is closer to probable for Sunday. I would expect to see him back out on the field, mostly because the Lions are not going to be able to tell Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're not playing 2 games in a row. I think they had to hide his pads and then tie him down inside the locker room last week to keep him off the field. That dude wants to play through anything that comes his way. Branch and Gibbs both missed practice today. They still seem day-to-day questionable for Sunday, but St. Brown is certainly a good bet to play.
All right, Will Burchfield from 97 won the ticket in Detroit. And Will, we'll catch up with you again on down the line as this season unfolds for the Detroit Lions. Really, really fun. Appreciate it very much, buddy.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, there you go, Will Burchfield. We're going to step aside for our final break. When we come back, NFL fullback Johnny Stanton's going to be with us. We're going to talk. We're just going to move around the league. We're going to focus on the NFC and what's going on there, coming off that shellacking of the Cowboys by the 49ers, and we'll get his view on what's happening around the league. You're with Evan and Scott. This is the NFL Playbook Podcast from Sportsnaut.com. Welcome back. The NFL Playbook Podcast from Sportsnaut.com. Scott Gulbransen, Evan Groat are with you. We're going to take you home in this segment, and to help us with that, we're bringing on our special guest. We're happy to bring back Johnny Stanton, NFL fullback. You might have seen him rolling around the ground and jumping through some offensive line, taking on some defensive linemen for the Cleveland Browns and the Minnesota Vikings. He joins us now. Johnny, thanks for being with us here on the NFL Playbook Podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. It's good to be here.
All right, man. First, I got to start with the most important thing, which is, Evan, you might know this, but Johnny and I both UNLV graduates. Johnny played football for the Rebels. Rebels are 4-1 for the first time since 2000. Johnny, how you feeling?
True.
Man?
I'm feeling good. Going into a big rivalry week, playing up against the guys at Reno. We don't call them Nevada. We call them Reno. We're looking to take it to the Wolfpack because I think this is the first time we've been favored in a little while. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, it's gonna be fun. I can't wait for that. And to keep the cannon. By the way, Evan, just so we inform you, I know everybody's listening to us for NFL football, but the Fremont Cannon is the trophy in essence that UNLV
Classic.
and Reno play over. So whoever wins gets the cannon for the year, gets to color it, paint it their color. It's the most expensive college football rivalry trophy in the country. Just so you know.
Heaviest, I think, too.
Yes. You got the whale. Yeah. So there we go. All right. So let's jump into the NFL and want to start. We just talked with Will Burchfield about the Lions. Johnny, you see this team, man. Everybody kind of liked Dan Campbell, the throwback football coach. And people in the NFL were skeptical that approach would work with modern athletes like you in the NFL. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen there, how he's getting the most out of them. They've obviously drafted well. They're bringing in really talented guys, but how that's all come together is pretty cool.
You know, obviously they have a great coaching staff, being able to have such success with rookies between Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra last year. I'm really excited to see this offense move into the playoffs really deep. I selfishly would love to see the Rams and Detroit play each other in the playoffs. I think that would be a great matchup of two really exciting offenses. But the Lions are doing a great job of making use of the weapons that they have. Even in weeks where they don't have their number one receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, they're able to spread the ball, spread the love to some really great role players. And honestly, these role players on the Lions would be, number one, number two guys on other teams. So the Lions are one of my favorites to go deep in the playoffs this year.
I want to ask you about the Lions' opponent this week, the Bucs. Are you at all surprised to see what Baker Mayfield has been able to do in his short time with the Bucs? I mean, he's kind of rejuvenated his career a bit here. I know it's a small sample size, but he has the offense playing really well. We saw what that offense was able to do with Tom Brady last year. Are you at all surprised to see what Baker Mayfield has done so far?
It's really great to see Baker playing at his highest level again, which he hasn't really played since 2020 when I was with him in Cleveland. 2021 was obviously a make or break year for him in Cleveland, and with the injury, it didn't seem to work out. 2022, they went a different route, but he's finally gotten the opportunity to be able to play healthy. He's making his receivers look really good. It's a really well-rounded team, and I know the NFC South isn't the most exciting football to watch right now in the NFL, but they are winning, and they're winning ugly, which is a sign of a good team.
Yeah, absolutely. Johnny, we were hyping up the game this past Sunday night. Of course, the 49ers host the Dallas Cowboys. In my predictions up on Sportsnaut.com, they asked all of the editors to pick your of course, they ask you this before the first week, who's going to go to the Super Bowl. I actually thought for once, because I've never bought in on the Cowboys hype, but this year I thought, with that defense, I love Micah Parsons. So I picked them to go Super Bowl, and I said the 49ers would be the most overrated team. Boy, was I wrong. When you come out of that game, though, and you look at what happened, obviously Dallas has some question marks. The defense was not what anyone expected, and it shows you two things, right? Which is that the Cowboys might not be where people expected them to be on defense, but also that 49er offense is pretty dang good with Brock Purdy back there. What did this game tell you about supremacy in the NFC? Because, of course, you got the Eagles there, too, which I now think is the second best team in the NFC. But tell me your view overall coming out of that game.
Coming out of that game, I think we learned more about the Niners than we did about the Cowboys. Obviously, the Cowboys are one of the more impressive teams in the NFC, but they're still reeling from Trayvon Diggs going down for the year. And they are trying to fix that defense in real time where they do have the rest of the year. They still have 13 weeks left in the season to be able to make that happen. They're in the NFC East. They really are only having to compete with the Commanders or so to be able to win that, or with the Eagles, excuse me. I think they can absolutely still get a wild card spot in the NFC East. But I think the Niners, they really showed how dominant Brock Purdy is. I went on Twitter to say, I think Brock Purdy right now is a top 5, or is at least playing like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I caught some flack for that, but I saw that as a pretty popular take this season or this week. And I'm sticking to it.
I want to travel to the NFC North for my next question. I know we've talked a lot about the Lions this week on the show. I want to ask you about the Green Bay Packers. They struggled Monday night against the Raiders. Jordan Love, had a tough night himself. His 6 interceptions are second in the NFL right now. I know he's only made a handful of NFL starts, but what's your assessment of him? And if you were a Green Bay Packers fan, would you have some concerns right now?
Seeing Jordan Love come in for Aaron Rodgers from last year, it's obviously there's a learning curve. There is not the most explosive offense there in Green Bay. They obviously showed this last weekend that they don't have, the guys who can blow up for multiple touchdown games. Christian Watson obviously had that one play that should have gone for a touchdown that went about 70 yards, but they don't have the guys who can just burst out. They don't have the Tyreek Hills. They don't have all these guys who can, blow through defenses. So Jordan Love is trying to take over in, I think, what some people might have thought was a rebuilding year, and they're finding themselves in the second place in the NFC North right now, with the Vikings and Bears having down years. So I still see them being able to compete. Now, I don't necessarily see them being at the same level as the Detroit Lions, but I do think that the Packers fans have something to look forward to, at least in future years for the Packers, especially coming off of that last week loss. I think that they are looking forward to having a better second half of the season.
So we'll go out to the NFC East now. I know we just talked about it with the Cowboys, and they're facing off with the 49ers, but the New York Giants. When you're in a situation like that, where and this is really where I value your kind of locker room perspective as a player, which is the idea that, look, so much around them, even the narrative, look, it's hard playing in New York. When things aren't going well, the media just exacerbates it because it pours it on. But when you're in a situation like that, Saquon Barkley holds out, comes back. Now he's been injured, hasn't been able to get on the field. Then you have all the issues with the offensive line. They're not winning football games. How encompassing does that become every single day when you go to work, when you go to practice, when you go to meetings, when things are going in that direction?
Obviously it's a weight on your back. You're wondering what is going to turn it around for us. And I don't really see the Giants turning around anytime soon. With Daniel Jones going down, it was interesting with Daniel Jones. I was wondering what was going to be the breaking point there. He took so many hits over the last several weeks that it finally caught up to him. He is obviously not somebody who shies away from contact. Nobody really looks at him as somebody who is a dual threat. Always he obviously is a threat with his legs, but I don't think he's necessarily looking to run first. But he's finding himself in that position just from the amount that he's scrambling. Obviously, they're hurting for Saquon Barkley to come back. I think Daniel Jones, I believe, I checked last week. I have to check again. I believe he's the leading rusher on the team, even with Saquon being gone since week 2, I think. It is something that is very curious to me because I didn't see the Giants coaching staff protecting Daniel Jones like I would have thought they would. Like they might for a quarterback that they're looking to be able to ride for the next several years. And I don't see them having any, unless they're chasing the Caleb Williams lottery. I don't see them being able to get out of that rut for a while.
Yeah. It's I mean, I feel for Giants fans there. I know a lot of teams are going through the same thing too, but it's just, you see the spotlight shining, and they made the playoffs last year. I think people got excited that Brian Daboll was can turn things around there, and then it seems to go south. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. All right, Johnny, listen, man, we appreciate you coming on. Also, by the way, make sure you follow Johnny on X.com. It's at Johnny Stanton IV, which is for Stanton 4. His website is also Stanton4.com. And we'll have you back on real soon, my man. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
All right, man. Thank you. I appreciate you spending the time.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Okay,
Thanks,
buddy.
Johnny.
Take care. I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Bye-bye. All right, again, thank you to Johnny Stanton. How about the UNLV Rebels? Evan, I mean, come on.
Well, Scott, I'm just glad that one team in Vegas is playing well right now.
That is true. They're 4-1.
Although the Raiders did win this weekend.
The Raiders did win for those Vegas people
ugly
out there.
win.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's going to be another exciting weekend in the NFL. So much going on. We're going to watch all the headlines. By the way, all you got to do is go to sportsnaut.com and you'll get all the NFL news that you need right there, updated constantly by the hardworking staff here at Sportsnaut, which includes myself and Evan as well. So please do that. Make sure you follow Evan on x.com, by the way, eGroat5, Groat, not Groot, Groat, for those fans out there of the movies. Yeah. Anyway, or the comic book, whatever you're into. But anyway, follow Evan. Evan also hosts the Just Pod Baby podcast, which is a Raiders podcast. So if you're a Raider fan, check out Evan's work there as well. So we can do that. But Evan, we will get back on the next week and see what unfolds in the NFL this week. But I'm excited for that. Actually, that Lions Buccaneers game. I want to see there. I mean, Bucs at 3-1, as you mentioned. Lions at 4-1. It's a big road game for the Lions. If they come out of that 5-1, boy, I mean, they're for real.
Yeah, we know who the elite teams are in the NFC with the 49ers and the Eagles. I'm looking to see which team is going to try to push themselves into that elite category. I think the next two teams in line have to be the Lions and the Bucs. We'll see which one can kind of separate themselves from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, and I'm going to go out west too and tell you a team that's kind of flying under the radar, ironically, the Seattle Seahawks.
Yes.
The Seattle Seahawks, because they're in the same division. They're not going to win the division. Okay, the 49ers are going to win the division unless something crazy happens. But the Seahawks, they were my kind of underdog pick to start the year. And boy, what Pete Carroll has done, whether you like Pete Carroll or not, guess what, folks? They have rebuilt that team pretty quickly. Geno Smith, with his renaissance, has led that. And the defense is doing really well. So I'm interested to see when they play San Francisco again, how that goes, because that'll kind of give you a gauge for that. And maybe that's not fair because San Francisco is so good right now. But watch the Seattle Seahawks as one of those teams you're talking about in the NFC that could be in that tier 2 below the top 3 or 4 that might make some noise when it comes to playoff time. So it'll be fun to watch. But we're only in week 6, so we'll see how it goes. Evan, I appreciate it, man. We will talk to you next week when we ramp it all up again.
Can't wait to do it. Looking forward to it.
All right. Do us a favor. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. You can listen to it on the way into work on Thursday morning or Friday, whenever you want to listen to it. Do that. Get you ready for the NFL weekend. Also here on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the sportsnaut.com channel. Also, hit the like button as long as you like us, and also the notifications bell so you know when we have a new video. For everyone here at sportsnaut.com and for Evan Groat, I'm Scott Gulbransen. We'll talk to you next time.